This episode is brought to you by Resy and American Express. Resy is a digital platform that connects restaurants to restaurant lovers by elevating dining experiences, providing original industry content, and helping to fill some of the country's most exciting dining rooms. Because restaurants have always been more than just places to eat. The amazing world of restaurants is just a few taps away in the Resy app and at resy.com.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn and I hire wrong. So our orders get all backed up. We're drowning in paperwork, then actually drowning. Carol is fighting off sharks with a stapler and pirates are pillaging the office copier and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant goes beyond the resume, using unique insights to deliver a smarter shortlist. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
I don't ever think that I make a choice between restaurants and carts. A restaurant, is going to cost more money because you're sitting down. You're going to buy more things.
Yeah.
These are different services that are being offered.
Yeah. This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. It's the return of food writers talking about food writing. Every couple of weeks, I invite a journalist in to talk about some favorite recent food writing, as well as their thoughts on the industry as a whole. On today's show, I speak with Chris Crowley. Chris is a senior writer at New York Magazine covering food and culture around the 5 boroughs. I've really admired Chris's career over the years and wanted to have him in to talk about some recent reporting. I hope you enjoy this episode. We are back with food writers talking about food writing. I'm here with Chris Crowley. What is up, my man?
That's a good question. The Knicks lost by 2 points last night.
I know.
We're all depressed.
It was a close one in Miami. I like that result. We could talk about ball all day. But Chris, I think this is going to be a great conversation because I really respect your work. I think you are one of our city's finest reporters reporting on food and culture, but really getting into all the different angles that really relate to this world we live in, this New York City we live in. And we're going to talk about a really big piece you reported earlier this year as one of our stories. Before we get to that, where have you been dining out? Give me one restaurant, mini review, rec, however you want to call it.
Yeah, does it have to be in New York or can it be?
Can be wherever, man.
Yeah, I was just in Tokyo and Taipei for 2 weeks.
Amazing.
And I had not been back to the Eastern Hemisphere the entirety of it since 2009. So
yeah,
a lot of my resources and time have gone into that. I don't get to go back all the time, obviously, or like anybody else. I went to a restaurant in Taipei. I was really excited to go to Taipei. I'd been to mainland China, to Xi'an, Shanghai, a few other places. I'd never been to Taiwan before. We went to a restaurant called Dawan Mato. And it's, I might mispronounce this, but it's a type of restaurant called, I think it's Ruchao. And I don't really know what I'm talking about with that stuff. Mm-hmm. I mostly read about it and got interested in going to one of these places because of something that Clarissa Way wrote for, I think, a FAR, but you'd have to Google it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, man, like, we had a couple dishes there that really stood out. One of them was just that I had, like, the best fried oysters I've had outside of New Orleans.
Wow.
And, you get that classic thing where it's a little bit of like a mix of like white pepper and salt and you dip them in them. Yeah. It's like really plump, like good breading, well fried, really soft on the inside, and that kind of like explosive way that they cook it there, right? And it's a different thing that we do, and the oysters are also a little different. And, now I want to talk about 5 other restaurants I ate there, but I'll mention one other dish, which is they have this like, I don't know if they'd call it gong bao jiding or if they just call it kung pao chicken, versus because it's like an interpretation, right? And it's not the Sichuan dish. It was sweeter. It had all the elements, right? It was sweeter and saucy, but beyond the chicken, it also had cut up pieces of youtiao, right? The crawler.
Yeah.
In the sauce and everything, and that was just like extremely good. Like I would love, if I knew a place that served that here, I would go and eat that immediately.
Sounds like an amazing trip. I'm sure you have a lot to. Are you gonna write about it at some point?
Probably for myself. I mean, I've written in my hand, actually written, not typed, like in my notebook about it.
Yeah.
pages, and I'll probably post about it on my Instagram, where I will sometimes I've kind of stopped, but we'll kind of write more like diaristic things.
Yeah, I've followed. It's nice. It's a cool format for you.
I don't think I'd write an article about it because it's like my focus is on New York City, and it's, you know, hard enough sometimes to justify writing about something 2 hours away.
Yeah, let
this
alone
is a
12.
little further than that.
Yeah, a little further.
But I'll do it for myself.
Yeah, I hope to read that grid post at some point, because I know you let it rip sometimes on
I'll
grid.
get on the grid.
I like the grid. I'll mention one restaurant that I went to recently, Spetro in Poughkeepsie. I have to say, Poughkeepsie is a really cool restaurant city. Like, I lived up near there for 5 years, and I've been talking about Kingston a lot on the show. I think next year is my year for Poughkeepsie. So many cool spots, and this place is right on the campus of Vassar, like probably a short walk, to be honest. And it's one of these cool places that's like very much was a sports bar. Like, there was like every screen was filled with like ball and just like stuff going on. And so when I walk in, I'm like, interesting. But my friend Brandon Collins, a great chef, took me there. And they're doing this kind of like hybridized Roman style, lots of little fried dishes, great pastas. And then the pizza side of the menu was most interesting. And we ordered two, had a great caramelized onion dip, had some stracciatella and bread. Really, really, really nice products going on there. And then the two pies, one was a mushroom with white miso, interestingly, in ricotta, and then the other was with andouille, bacon, and arugula and honey. Just text, but great flavor development in the dough. And then they did a cassata cake, which kind of hard to do. They can feel sometimes like dried out and maybe not the best products. Opposite. Marzipan was perfect. It was so good.
Do you feel like I like that? I mean, I get what you're saying about cassata. I had really good versions of it in Sicily. Also bad versions and bad versions here. Yeah. And then maybe one place. I feel like Best Sicily downtown, the financial district, does a good version of it.
I've not been there. It's mentioned on the show before. I should go there for cassata. That's the one.
Maybe, I had it once there and I liked it. I mean, maybe your standards are higher. But I'm curious if you think like, I feel like Poughkeepsie is far enough from the city that it has, it's far enough to have its own thing that isn't, how do I say this? New York is so big that it can, stuff right outside of it, all the energy gets sucked towards the city, right? It can be kind of a black hole. And Poughkeepsie's far enough away. But I say that and I'm like, well, New Haven should be far enough also. And I've never felt this way. I've always felt like everything in Connecticut kind of gets sucked towards.
Connecticut is such a small state and it's so close to, I think, by the expressway to New York that it feels like it's another borough at times. I think Poughkeepsie is unique in that, of course, the CIA is right up the street. So you've got some interesting CIA lineage happening in the restaurant scene. You've also got a city with Vassar there and a lot of youth culture happening in the city. And then you've got people who just love living there. It's a really pleasant place to live if you have to be in the city for your work or even if you just live up there and New York doesn't really matter. It's a cool dynamic. It's very different from Kingston. And I'm gonna tap into that next year. Poughkeepsie is my 2026 year. Before we get to some food writing, and we have some great stories to cover, Chris, I just want to hear a little bit about your own career and describe your role at New York Magazine as a senior writer, and when you look at your week or your month or even your year. And Alan's going to be on the show soon. The editor of the section, he's been on before, and we'll talk a little bit more about NY Mag. But what do you look to cover? What's your kind of remit, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, my title is senior writer. I'm like a reporter. I don't know. My remit, I try to, when I explain my work to people or when I explain my job to people, I say that I look at it as like a city reporting through restaurants. And that's what I try to do. It's not only what I do. I also do some service journalism or, whatever else. But a lot of the time, that's what I want to do. And that might mean, labor stories, stories about the people that go to restaurants and also the people that run restaurants. It might be a profile of someone who is an interesting character who's running a place. And I think hopefully says something about, where food culture is in the city or where it could lead or something that I think deserves a little bit of shine. But it can also be about the culture of people that go to the place. And then also about development of neighborhoods. That might mean like an enclave of people. Like we wrote about this neighborhood in the Bronx that has developed as a result of this, was a result of the civil war in Yemen that didn't exist before, or about gentrification in a neighborhood. And It can also just mean, you know, stories about how the industry works, and you know, hopefully it those stories say something more about, you know, the city, and that can mean like the sort of like the difficulties of doing business, or you know, with the case of this, I know you want to talk about it later, but with the case of this one story that I wrote this year, it can be about like the economy of a part of the industry, and you know, how people suffer because of a system that has been not working for them for years.
Yeah, we're referring to a widespread fraud tied to food cart licensing that we'll talk about. And I love how you just put it. You really nailed it that I was trying to get in the intro, is it's city reporting through restaurants or through food. And there's something about New York Magazine, why I believe we all love it so much, is that there's always that city there. And I think that through fashion, through film, through food is, I would say, the most important topic covered in New York Magazine right now. And the city changes. And I mean, my question for you is, as a city reporter, how do you balance this idea of being out in the world, reporting, going to restaurants, eating the food, doing that, and then, like, I'll call it laptop time? I think the best food writers spend more time out than at the laptop, but it's really hard. And I want to recognize that in this show where we talk about food writing. Active food journalists have that challenge of balancing the need to write and be focused, and then the need to report.
Yeah, it's funny because when I think about this, I think about, like, I've been in New York Mag for 10 years, over 10 and a half years. And earlier on, the issue, you could say, for young writers is that you get, you know, into what Adam Platt would call the blog mines, I think. Mm-hmm. You know, just like you'd have to, the dynamic of the internet was different. The dynamics of incentives of publishing were different, and you just have to publish a ton of short things all the time. And so it was like, how do I get away from my desk? Mm-hmm. And not because you were like busy researching things that you can only find or that are easier to access on the internet, but because you were just constantly putting out stuff. So I think, like, my answer to your question is that, like, for sure, for me, I think that my job is working, or rather that, like, I'm doing good at my job when I'm out and around and talking to people. And how do I find the balance? It kind of depends, because sometimes my work requires me to look through, like, court documents and, you know, and all of that. And you have to do, like, it's, you know, if you're looking into public records about people, that's something you have to do on the internet for the most part, right? I mean, I did have to go to with some of these courts, you do have to go in person and go get the documents, which is, I wish wasn't the case. Yeah. Because it took a while for me to go to the Staten Island courthouse. But it's just easier online. It's quicker. You could go, I guess, and get some stuff, other things in person, maybe. But in any case, I think it's interesting, because I guess what I'm trying to say is that my answer is sort of, like, different than what it used to be, because
incentives have changed.
Yeah, and, like, some of the same, like, I get some of the same value for, depending on what the story I'm doing, by being at my desk versus not being at my desk. But, you know, I don't know. If you're trying to write about things, I mean, I think I'm interested in, like, going out and finding. You want to find stuff that, like, captivates you in person, and not just, like, you know, if you're writing about something just because you came across it on the internet, it's probably, you know,
it's not going to be as rich. And with food writing in particular, you got to eat the food. You have to, like, go to the restaurant to actually form an opinion. That's, like, my North Star when reporting. Like, I try to not have guests on the show if I haven't tried their food, if they're a chef. I mean, it just feels it becomes too much like internet slop if you're not actually putting eyes on the restaurant and, like, smelling the restaurant, the aromas of the restaurant.
Yeah, I feel like something I've said to other people is maybe adjacent or related to what you're saying, which is that, like, I'm interested in, like, my version of the city. Is that I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I'm interested in like, my experience of the city, or your experience, or someone else's experience of the city. Not, like, the sort of, like, astroturfed version of it that is, and I don't mean this as a criticism of anyone who's doing a job, but, like, the astroturf version of it that sort of, like, pushed us through marketing and publicity and so on, and money. And, you know, and this is maybe not as much the case as it used to be, or maybe it is, but, you know, there's this, like, layer on top of the actual city that is the version of it that we're sold.
Yeah, and
versus
that
the
plays out on the
reality.
internet, that plays out through SpawnCon, that plays out through social media influencers.
Yeah, and I think like
Yeah.
it's, hopefully it's still even more valuable. This sort of personal experience that you're talking about is hopefully even more valuable because it's really easy for any of us to just like produce content or whatever you want to call it that's just based on things that are being pitched to us because it's just like you don't have to go and find it for yourself.
That's why I love what the work you do, what Tammy does, what the folks at the New York Times, the new critics there. I think there's a real bullshit meter with all of you. We need PR. We need our friends in publicity to help us, get interviews and tell us what's up. I mean, that does serve a purpose. I would never sell them out, but like, I like people who go out and have that bullshit sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, and it depends on who you're talking to, but like obviously some of these business owners would say, well, I need PR too, because like they're busy running a business and they need someone to help them do this job that they, especially if they can afford it. And they're like, I don't want to be doing this. I want someone else to be doing it for me. I mean, I have friends who are publicists. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just kind of like the, I think this is probably too deep, but it all starts with like kind of just the disintegration of media that's been going on for decades. And
decades. I mean, it certainly has been decades, but the past 2 years, the past 1 year has been particularly disturbing, I would say, especially in our world. I think it's been tough to see so many people lose their jobs and have budgets cut. Today's episode is brought to you by Our Place. Are you still using that set of pots and pans from college? The non-stick sauté pan with the coating rubbing off? Hear me out. It might be time for an upgrade. I recently went on a search for the perfect sauté pan and landed on the Our Place website. I liked how their cookware looked. It was minimal, though functional, with a color palette that matched my own aesthetic. And I really liked that they make better kitchen products that are simply better for you. Our Place makes high-performance, toxin-free cookware. It's that simple. Their products are made without forever chemicals like PFAS and PTFEs. I had to Google that, and man, that stuff is nasty. So you can cook confidently without wondering what's in your pan. Stop cooking with toxic cookware and upgrade to Our Place today. Visit FromOurPlace.com/taste and use code TASTE for 10% off site-wide. With a 100-day risk-free trial, free shipping and returns, you can experience this game-changing cookware with zero risk. That's FromOurPlace.com/taste and use code TASTE for 10% off site-wide. If you're like me, your skin needs some extra care this time of year. All that cooking for family and friends has me busy dipping into my favorite cookbooks. I've been working my way through the re-release of David Leibowitz's Ready for Dessert and eyeing his nectarine raspberry upside-down gingerbread cake and buckwheat chocolate chip cookies. This busy season also has my skin in a pretty interesting place. That's why I've continued to rely on OneSkin. I love their OS1 body formula, and it's been invaluable to have a daily routine that delivers both powerful skincare and longevity benefits, all in just a few simple steps. OneSkin also just launched their limited edition holiday sets, including the Nightly Rewind gift set, which is one of those rare gifts that's both impressive and genuinely useful, providing an upgrade to anyone's nightly routine. Featuring their best-selling face moisturizer and their new peptide lip mask, each component of the set is designed to work together as your body enters its natural nightly repair mode, helping renew skin at the cellular level for a stronger, smoother, and more resilient skin. For a limited time, try OneSkin for 15% off using promo code TASTEPOD at oneskin.co. That's promo code TASTEPOD at oneskin.co.
Hey, Matt. My parents are scared to come to New York. They just think that the subways are always flooding and pizza costs $8 a slice. But that's not what New York is. There's so many beautiful sights for them to come and see, like the Carousel in Dumbo or a shot from the ferry at sunset.
Oh man, I mean, New York is a great place, but you gotta sell them on it. Here's a thought. How about sending them some photos, but not over text, not over email? Send them a frame loaded with a bunch of cool photos from New York, with subways that aren't flooded, that are actually running. And here's the way to do it. Aura frames. Aura frames are great. They sent me one to check out, and it was really cool and dumb simple to set up. I loaded photos using the app, and it was displaying them instantly. There are no limits to the amount of photos you can load, and you can customize messages with each photo. And here's the deal. You can preload an Aura frame with photos and have it directly sent to that special person in your life, gift wrapped and all. There will be no price tag, and you can include a personalized message. Think about it. All those photos from this past summer's family reunion delivered in a digital frame. That is pretty cool. For a limited time, visit auraframes.com and get $45 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code TASTE at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code TASTE. This exclusive Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal is their best of the year, so order now before it ends. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Let's actually shift energy and talk about some writing. Are you ready? You good?
I can do that. Yeah.
Okay, the first story we're going to talk about, I love this. I think you're really well suited to talk about it. Why the New York Bodega is Here to Stay by Anna Code in the New York Times. It's a terrific piece with all these stories. I'm linking to them in the show notes. Bodegas are beloved characters of the city, part of the cultural zeitgeist. I think all of us longtime New Yorkers have our favorites. Over the years, though, bodegas have been at risk. Hundreds closed during the pandemic, and they have to contend with just the crazy nature of retail in New York City, shoplifting, ATM thefts, and police crackdowns. In this age of increasing rents, these growing chains, and endless food delivery apps, there's definitely somewhat of it's an urban miracle. Anna writes in the piece so well that they exist. I think the piece is really cool because it goes over some of the history of bodegas in New York, starting as Jewish and Italian delis, and then transferring ownership to Spanish speakers, immigrants from Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Spain. And then today you can find bodega owners from Venezuela, Mexico, Korea, and China. And I think we all have our favorite bodegas for the food, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The key part of this appeal of the bodega is it's easy to find one. Quote, when you walk right by a bodega on your daily route, the convenience rivals a delivery service. That is so true. It is why we should be supporting our bodegas, because they're there. They're on our walk home from the subway. And I like at the end of the piece a little bit of a tie-in to the cultural significance of bodegas. Rihanna appeared on the cover of Paper Magazine posing in front of a bodega fridge. A$AP Rocky partnered with Selfridges in London to set up a New York City bodega within there. Not sure about that one. But really, the future of bodegas may be comedy. I think that was a really interesting beat in the story where they talked about the Bodega Comedy series run by Christopher Isaacson. He's set up comedy shows within the bodegas, which I think is really clever. A lot going on in the story. I think it was terrific reporting. Chris, what do you think of the piece and generally your relationship with bodega?
Yeah, it's funny. I was trying to remember, and I was Googling, and I couldn't find it. But one of my old friends who's a musician and DJ would DJ at these parties. There was some bodega in Bushwick that people would throw parties in the basement of, and I was trying to find it so I could bring it up, but I couldn't. I can just allude to the fact that it exists. I think it's the story made me think about a few things. One of them is much more recent, which is that I really enjoyed this recent Reddit thread in the Food NYC forum, where someone was basically asking if the chopped cheese was a Mandela effect thing. And it was just a long thread of different people talking about, when they first heard of it, where they grew up in the city, in the Heights, in the South Bronx, in Central Bronx, in Brooklyn. It wasn't a thing where I grew up in the 90s and the 2000s. People just sharing different experiences and different theories about when they think this thing actually happened and if they feel like it's sort of talking about it was interesting because the first time I ever remember reading about that was a First We Feast story that was published a while ago.
Yeah.
And, it sort of then became this big sensation. Anyways, I don't mean to get too deep into that. I just thought the thread was really long and a lot of people just sharing anecdotal reactions. And it kind of spoke to the presence of these places.
I mean, chopped cheese, of course, a bit bodega classic. And I mean, I think I first found out about Badizas and Marrow.
Yeah, sure. People talked a lot about that and sort of their exporting of a specific part of New York culture.
Yeah.
But the article also reminded me of the Yemeni bodega protest, right? Which was a 2016 event that was a response to, the Trump's, Muslim ban. And, and a lot of these bodega owners are more recently Yemeni, right? And people get into this. It's offers like a low barrier of entry, I think, for people in the sense of like, it is a small business that you can operate that, I think, you have to be able to run a store and have to be able to run a store decently. You don't necessarily need like a college accreditation or something like that, And so you can get into it and you don't necessarily need like super robust English language skills. And so you just see different groups of people coming in it. And these bodegas organized and created a sort of merchant association. It was bodegas, grocery stores, other businesses.
Yeah.
But it was a fascinating event. And it also reminds me of something that our mayor-elect said to me in 2020 when he did the Grub Street Diet, which I used to run, which was, and I'm paraphrasing him, but basically being like all of his friends think that bodegas are Yemeni and hookah is Dominican. And so, he has a talent for talking, right? And I think that I think about that quote because I think it's funny, but also because it kind of speaks to like the cultural exchange behind these places, because many of them, it's like bodega is a Spanish word. It's a lot of these places like, okay, they were delis and corner stores. Now they're bodegas, but they're run by people from the Middle East. And it's this fusion of things. And, I think that what the article kind of gets at, right, is the sort of like cultural attachment that certain people have to it amidst probably like as a result of like great upheaval in New York City and in neighborhoods they might have grew up in where there's been a ton of change. Yeah. And they're like, I don't mean this. I mean, I use the word ordinary in a good way, but a lot, they're ordinary places in terms of like they're not expensive. They're supposed to be places that you could go to every single day.
And they're open all the time. And that's the other thing. I think the power of habit is in effect here, where no matter where you live in New York City, you pass a few bodegas on your path to work or home, and it's just the power of habit. You go there for certain things, and I think the piece did a great job in just highlighting a little bit of the struggle, with the economics right now, with rent hikes and with with this great change in New York City's socioeconomic balance. And I think it's just like a really big reminder to appreciate the bodegas that you may be passing by and forgetting about. And with all the apps and with all grocery online and all that stuff, is maybe throw a few bucks at your bodega.
I would like to think that the attachment to it also says, I hope that it means that people are interested in like human connection or interaction, even if, there's funny things can happen with the discourse around these places, but I don't know. I prefer to go buy things in person, and I don't. That's just me. But I there's value I think in having sort of just fleeting interactions with people, and it gives you like a sense of place.
Yeah, I mean, New York is a city where we bump up against humanity every single day in different levels of intensity depending on where you are during that day. And part of that is going to the bodega for, like coconut water. Remember that era? And then there was like, or like a BC,
Pedialyte.
Pedialyte era, yeah. And I think also, and this wasn't talked about in the piece that much, but I mean, there are some wildly cool bodegas too that sell like foods that you will never find in a grocery store, and just like the curation and the eye of the bodega owner to have brand new products or just products from, a home country is why New York is so special.
For a minute, I was kind of trying to write a story that was about, I created a terrible word, bodega-strants. Like, but people were like, there were people that I saw opening basically restaurants. And I know, look, obviously you have bodegas with prepared foods that are more extensive beyond like the flat top and so on, and like a place where you can go get like various Dominican dishes or whatever. But there were these. I kind of noticed more people setting up tables in them and stuff. And when I would talk to one guy in East Harlem about it, he told me that he had wanted to open a restaurant, but he couldn't find a place that he could afford, and so he eventually found this bodega space, and he basically just opened a restaurant in it. And there's a place in the Bushwick that we wrote about a couple of years ago called Codigo, and it's a Venezuelan place. And it's the same thing. They have like this big menu of Venezuelan food, and they have tables in the aisles. You know, you have those places, and you have, you know, a lot of Guatemalan ones too that are serving these, you know, primarily delivery workers, but they're basically running like what feel like informal restaurants out of bodegas, which is, you know, like, I don't know if all of them feel the way this one guy felt, but you can imagine that it's a response to the economic pressure in New York, how expensive rents are for restaurant spaces. Just can't afford it. And you are like, well, the next best thing is I could open up this place and I can sell food out of it.
And make a living and really serve the community really well. Next story, he's taking advantage of your dream. Street vendors need permits. Mohammed Arabi appears to have made a killing off of their desperation. You wrote this piece for New York Magazine, and I don't want to summarize it because you can do a great job, but take us through this piece that was so important. It really blew up on the internet in the best way. A lot of people read it. You know, what was the genesis of the piece?
Yeah, I mean, I was walking through Elmhurst, and I got a tip from one of the higher-ups, I guess you could say, at the Street Vendor Project. Or rather, I got a text from her, from Karina Kaufman Gutierrez, and who's someone I've known probably for most of the time I've been here, I don't know, 7 years, something like that. And I think I'd said to her kind of half seriously that if I ever got laid off, I'd become a PI, which my friend told me was a dumb idea because I haven't been a cop. It's more just like, I like scrounging around and looking into things. So I told her that. She was like, I have a tip for you. And she called me and started telling me about this. And, you know, people, you know, they would have people tell them in the past, oh, this person ripped me off. You know, they stole me a permit that they never gave me. But they hadn't had an instance where they heard about the same person doing it. And they had a few people come to them, a few people who were, some of them were members and some of them weren't, and told them that, you know, hey, I bought a permit, it was never provided to me, and it was this person who allegedly did it, right? And so it seemed to me immediately like this is something that we should look into.
Yeah, what story emerges as you start to speak with many victims of this deceit, of this crime? Yeah,
so I mean, what I started off by talking. They put me in touch with a few people that were members or not, but people who would come to them. And then from there, I started looking into finding more people. And a lot of the people I found were through court records. And then they would introduce me to other people. And, you know, unsurprisingly, most street vendors are immigrants, right? And so unsurprisingly, most of the people that he allegedly did this to are immigrants. And the story that started emerging was that, you know, I think if you read articles, like say you go to the Times, you look at the Times like archives of stories, and you read about, like, you know, news reports about street vending in New York since the 90s. What you'll find is that the city has repeatedly promised to fix this issue or address this issue of the permit system, where what you have is you have a certain amount of permits that are provided by the city, but then there's a black market on top of that. And people are technically not supposed to lease their permit out to someone else, but everyone does it. And the city charges, I think it's $400 for a 2-year term. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's it.
It's relatively low for the stakes at hand. And
yeah, but then people, like, what you see over the years, and the guy Mohammed, who's the president of SPP, is quoted in a story from, I think, 2009, 2013, somewhere around then, where he was still a vendor. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how much you have to pay on the black market for this. And I think, again, it's whatever it is, it was way lower than what it is now. It keeps creeping up. And so this person who's allegedly doing this, right? He is taking advantage of this great pressure on people, where there's more people than ever that want to do this, but they're basically, you have these twin forces. That's so corny. You have these twin factors that are making life more difficult for a lot of these vendors, which is, it's not just ICE enforcement increasing or the threat of ICE enforcement increasing. It's also that there has been, and it's documented in the numbers, like there has been a great escalation in enforcement under the Adams administration. So if you go back to 2020, De Blasio's administration talked about how they were going to we're going to change things up in how we police this and move it away from the cops and have non-law enforcement officers enforce some of this stuff. That never happened. And then Adams takes over, wins the election, and the escalation it just increases. And so these people are being ticketed more and more, which means they're going to court more, which means they're fearing being deported more. And you have a lot of you have a lot of people that have come over more recently that are, we published another story at Curbed about the candy sellers on the subway, right? And so you have a lot of people like this that are coming over who are, you could say more disenfranchised in the countries they come from, and then they're coming here, and their language skills are just, they don't have English language skills, and they're Spanish, and Spanish is a second language for them. And street vending is one of the only ways they can make money.
Yeah.
And so you just have these various factors coalescing to create this sort of perfect situation for someone to take advantage.
Yeah, so allegedly Mohammed Arabi is reaching out to vendors and offering a permit, which, as you outlined, provides safety from ICE, safety from ticketing, and that process of going to court. I think all vendors want to avoid that. So Mohammed's like, I can get you this paper, but it's going to cost you. And you really, in the piece, report very diligently about the manipulation that he allegedly uses and forces vendors to pay half up front. And we're talking in the thousands of dollars here. And then to get the permit, pay more. You have to pay more, and that pressure. And many times, and this is a heartbreaking part of the piece, is that, nothing arrives. I mean, these promises are empty. This is a blackmail, essentially, or a crime, allegedly. What's your interaction like with Mohammed Arabi, the center of this piece?
Yeah, kind of towards the end of the main reporting process, I reached out to him and called him. And he picked up the phone, and we talked very briefly, and he said that he could talk to me, but he'd need to have his lawyer present. And we could do it the next day. That didn't happen. He said, actually we can meet in person, and my lawyer will have to be there. Okay. So I said, let's meet at this restaurant that I chose because it's in his home neighborhood, hometown, whatever, it's in the neighborhood he lives in. And, he was like, okay, cool. And then it was, when I reached out to ask if we were still meeting, let me ask my lawyer. Oh, my lawyer can't come. My lawyer's out of the country right now. His kids. And then he just stopped responding to me. And then, okay. We never talked beyond a few very short phone calls. We talked again on the phone later. I told him the fact checking process basically began. We got back in touch. Yeah. And he sort of, did the same thing with the fact checker. He didn't answer any questions. He just, denied it after a certain point. And, then was again trying to meet me in person. And the last text I have from him is call me, which was the day the story was published. But the day before that, he was trying to do this thing where he was trying to get me to meet in person, asked me to meet him after work.
So he really, and then through his attorney, he denied everything.
Well, there was no attorney involved in the conversation.
Oh, interesting. That was just.
I guess I don't know whether the attorney exists or not, but I can tell you that he doesn't show up to court for anything, and that includes for a divorce case. I don't think there's an attorney because I don't have any reason to believe that, and I could be wrong, but I don't think there's. I mean, the last interactions we had was him telling me that he was cooperating with a federal investigation and that I would interfere with it by publishing this story.
Oh, interesting.
Which I would describe as something that I don't know, that I wasn't able to verify that.
It seems like something that you would see on like CSI or some cop show.
Yeah, I mean, our interactions were super limited, but in reporting a story like this, like your interactions with the person might be limited, but it doesn't mean that you don't. It doesn't mean you're not aware of conversations they've had with other people.
So I wanted to have you on mostly to talk about updates because this is published. When did you publish it? Like 6 months ago?
Like the very end of July.
Yeah, so it's been some time. I mean, a couple updates. Like, have you reached out to any of the victims? Have they gotten any help? And like the big question is with the Mamdani administration coming in, and you have a relationship with him going back to 2020. Do you see any hope for street vendors' rights improving in New York?
I talk to a few of these people somewhat regularly. A couple of them are named in the story. 3 of them. I think, I'll text them or we talk on the phone, depending. One of them is a guy who was a cop in Turkey. And, we mostly text because of language barrier. And I'll talk to a couple other people and they'll ask me about things. Some people who have trying to recover money from him. And I'll talk to, I talked to Karina from the Street Vendor Project anyways, but we will talk about it. There are no real updates about it beyond the fact that like this legislation that's mentioned in the story that had one part of it had passed and it was then vetoed by the Eric Adams administration. But there's sort of, I think there's hope that there's some momentum, especially because of the different politics of the incoming mayoral administration, that there's some momentum that towards changing this stuff and that it could actually happen. But it requires city council to act, right? Mm-hmm. And that is like, I'm not like an insider to that or anything like that. I don't have any special knowledge.
I'm sure you'll be reporting it though.
It.
I mean, and with your contacts at the Street Vendors Project, I would imagine January 1, there's a whole long list of things that the new administration are going to be tackling, but this seems, at least at 30,000-foot view, a core value that the new administration would want to fix.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand why things should be regulated. I'm not a libertarian.
No.
I believe regulation.
Totally.
I understand that like you can't have a free-for-all. New York City is like, we're not talking about like a small city. Like there's a lot of people that are going to want to, if there's a good economic opportunity, which you could argue that certain street vending jobs are versus others, right? Like owning a halal cart in Midtown is probably a better opportunity than something else. Not to get too off track, but anyway, I understand that it needs to be regulated. What I would say is that like the city, my question is, how does the city benefit from some guy who lives in Texas or Florida or even in New York, whatever, like privately making $20,000 a year off of this? That doesn't, like, this is a city permit that the city's not getting any money on, and someone else is making a ton of money off of it. And not only is that not going towards the city when we clearly, like, I don't know, we have city services that need more funding. But it's economically, like, I would argue that it's suppressing economic activity because it's a huge burden on the person who is paying that. They don't have as much money as they should to spend in the local economy, and it also means their prices have to be higher. Mm-hmm. And like, okay, I'm not saying the permit should cost more money. I'm just saying, like, certainly not. Like, I wouldn't know, but I just don't, like, if it's gonna cost more money, then it should go towards the city.
Yeah, I mean, there should be more permits, and there should be more officers of the city or representatives checking the permits, but there should be more permits, offered to these vendors to give them protection. And also, as a public safety measure, I agree there should be permits. I mean, it's important to have a checks and balances between the vendors and the government, which seemingly is on top of food safety concerns and all the the reasons we have permits.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've definitely, there are parts like I talked to Karina about this where I'm like, the little corridor in Flushing that's underneath the LIR bridge, and it's like really narrow, and there's always vendors there. Yeah, like there's things like that. There should be, like, maybe people should not be set up there because there's such a bottleneck of traffic, right? It's like there are real, like, the idea that it should just be a free for all, like I said before. No, like the Canal Street is overrun with people selling things. There's just too many people, and there's so many tourists, right? Like, I get it. There's an economic opportunity for people, but it's it's annoying to walk down.
Yeah,
and you have to think about, like, public safety. I mean, maybe that's like, that's a little dramatic, but like,
yeah.
In any case, there's there are a ton of, you go down, Roosevelt Avenue is the obvious place to talk about because that is, the hive of street vendor activity in New York. Mm-hmm. And Midtown, obviously, but this is different. I never understood the argument. I mean, I understand why, because they're just trying to make an argument for their benefit, but like the bid argument, the argument that bids make and that certain brick and mortar business owners make that like, this person setting up a street cart outside of my business is taking business away from me. I've never thought I don't ever think that I make a choice between restaurants and carts. And okay, maybe I'm not the best example, or maybe I'm not the best person to talk about this because I I definitely spend more of my income on restaurants and other food purchases than the average person. But, I don't think people are making a choice that's like a restaurant, is going to cost more money because you're sitting down. You're going to buy more things. Yeah. These are different services that are being offered. Yeah. And it's an economic opportunity. I mean, I know, Jessica Ramos a long time ago, we wrote about her because she was the first politician that I know of in New York who brought street vendors at the time into her. They feature them in her campaign. It's like these are people who are like this. I think the Street Vendor Project refers to them this way as like the small business owners in the city. And it's economic activity, and there are people that are like offering a service. I mean, these you wouldn't have all of these people working in this way, working these jobs, providing this food on the streets in these neighborhoods if it wasn't meeting a need. Yeah, like they're not just there sitting around not making money.
I'm going to leave it there. I can't wait for your follow-up reporting. I know you'll likely be working on something. This episode is brought to you by Our Place. Shopping for cookware online can be simply mysterious. I once bought a sauté pan online that promised a true non-stick experience, and all I got was an omelet that, you guessed it, stuck to the pan. And who knows what material I was actually cooking on. Most nonstick cookware still contains harmful chemicals like Teflon, which can leach into food, the environment, and the home. But the pan I bought online, man, it sure looked cool. Our Place makes high-performance, toxin-free cookware. It's that simple. Their products are made without forever chemicals like PFAS and PTFEs. I had to Google that, and man, that stuff is nasty. So you can cook confidently without wondering what's in your pan. Stop cooking with toxic cookware and upgrade to Our Place today. Visit FromOurPlace.com/taste and use code TASTE for 10% off site-wide. With a 100-day risk-free trial, free shipping and returns, you can experience this game-changing cookware with zero risk. That's FromOurPlace.com/taste and use code TASTE for 10% off site-wide. This episode is brought to you by ButcherBox. As a food writer, I can be a little skeptical about subscription cooking boxes. It's all big talk about cooking simplicity, but usually with pretty empty promises after using that promo code. ButcherBox is the true exception. I was sent a box of premium beef and pork and was blown away by the quality and variety. There was 100% grass-fed pasture-raised ribeye, tri-tip, and ground sirloin for burgers. For pork, they sent me a beautiful center-cut pork loin for slow roasting. I was super impressed, and I haven't even talked about the ribs, which I cooked in my Instapot. There was a rub of salt, white pepper, and togarashi, and I pressure cooked it with water and apple cider vinegar. Man, it was incredible. For nearly a decade, ButcherBox has led the industry with meat and seafood that's antibiotic-free. As an exclusive offer, our listeners can get free protein in every box for a year, plus $20 off your first box when you go to butcherbox.com/taste. Visit butcherbox.com/taste to get this limited time offer and free shipping always. That's butcherbox.com/taste. Don't forget to use our link so they know we sent you. It's gift giving season, and let me ask you, are you struggling? Is there somebody in your family who always gives the best gift, the gift everybody is talking about over brioche French toast after the gifts have been opened? This year, that could be you with Aura frames. Aura frames are great. They sent me one to check out, and it was really cool and dumb simple to set up. I loaded photos using the app, and it was displaying them instantly. There are no limits to the amount of photos you can load, and you can customize messages with each photo. And here's the deal. You can preload an Aura frame with photos and have it directly sent to that special person in your life, gift wrapped and all. There will be no price tag, and you can include a personalized message. Think about it. All those photos from this past summer's family reunion delivered in a digital frame. That is pretty cool. For a limited time, visit auraframes.com and get $45 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code TASTE at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code TASTE. This exclusive Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal is their best of the year, so order now before it ends. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. The last story I want to talk about is a good one. You want to imagine what it tastes like? Fuck you, says AI, by Georgina Voss in the terrific Vittles. I just love the opening line, quote, "The first image was in the window of a Subway on Bethnal Green Road, a high-rise photo of 2 bread rolls overstuffed with meat and cheese, raisins studded through the dough, one roll cheerfully attempting to mount the other. The accompanying text identified the buns as hot cross cheesy bacon bun toasties." More images appeared for the writer, a poster depicting a bright ocean of swirling cream dotted with glossy green and white cuboids. The text describes the dish as a Minecraft McFlurry from, of course, McDonald's. The writer was uncertain about what they were looking at. Was the photo taken by a real camera or was it AI slop? I love this line. AI-generated images are a patch of damp on the wall, annoying, spreading, and causing structural damage to the infrastructures through which they move. There's so many quotes in this piece. It's a very long piece. And I think to distill it into a couple lines is difficult, and you should read it. But I think in general, the fear is that we don't really know what we're looking at. And Georgina notes that, studio photography, we're talking about commercial photography for restaurants, there is manipulation happening. This is not verite. And when AI takes over the manipulation and starts to actually take over all the photo shoots, what are we looking at and what does it mean for food culture? She takes a hard look at the work of an AI artist. Quote, "Through AI images, influencers boast of incantations of nostalgic warmth, editorial shadows, and ultra-crisp textures to construct perfect pictures. The resulting images are flattened objects summoned from a database crammed with stolen photos." The stolen photos part is very interesting. When these AI artists are using LLMs to create art, a lot of times it's fed through copyright-protected imagery. So this whole debate around is it real or is it not could actually be illegal. You can make a legal claim if your copyrighted image is being used to sell a McFlurry. So there's a lot going on here. It's a very long piece, but I think the threads here are this world of AI photography and food. Chris, to you, do you guys talk about it in your mag about AI imagery for your photography for the food section? And are we at the top of this crest of LLM generated art, or is it just the start?
It's a good question.
A lot going on. It's a great piece.
One of the things when I was thinking about it after reading it that I remembered, and I feel like I'm going to possibly misremember this. I'm worried about getting things wrong. But I feel like at one point my longtime coworker Adam Platt said something to me about and maybe it was someone else, but I feel like it was Adam that talked about because he really likes black licorice, and he was talking about how our conception of the flavor is informed by artificial versions of it, right?
Yeah.
And at a certain point, the reference for the artificial thing becomes the actual reference point, right? And I thought about this because of the ending of this essay, where the writer was talking about this this AI image and how asking what people thought of it, asking the person working at the restaurant what people thought about it, and I think also maybe what the worker thought about it. And I think the person sort of shrugged it off or shrugged, about it and said something about how the kids like it. And I'm sort of curious to see what happens with young people and, if this sort of becomes normalized or that's the wrong word. It's a dramatic word, but it's if this sort of becomes the normal reference point, right? I don't think we're at that. a lot of the time, and obviously the story does, or any story you write about this stuff right now is going to get into this, that like we'll talk about how these LLMs or whatever else are the AI is like bad at creating images. Like, they have in the Vittles essay, one of the pieces of art they have is this like funny AI generated image of someone really clumsily eating not a cheeseburger, but like a piece of cheese on top of a cheeseburger, right?
Yeah.
And there's this uncanniness to it and whatever. Obviously, these things are just going to presumably keep getting better.
That's what I'm thinking too. Yeah.
I guess it depends on how real the bubble is and how big the bubble is and if it destroys everything.
I mean, I think there's such there's structurally such an important industry around food photography that we have to recognize that if brands start paying AI artists versus real artists using lenses and shooting real food, there's a whole industry that may evaporate, and that's really, really troubling.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to talk about a different article, but it feels related to this. Is my friend at work, James Walsh, wrote a recent story about the job market and young people, right? And it includes this anecdote from somebody at an advertising firm, I think, right, about how they're being pressured to use AI in work. And it really stuck out to me because I have a friend who told me the same thing, that it's like you are supposed to, on and on. And, of course, like this is going to, there's going to be adoption of this stuff by companies that aren't, I don't know. I mean, is this like cafe chain particularly concerned with like whether or not the image is real? No, they can get something for free and they want to.
Yeah, but it gets us as a culture used to art and like imagery that is fake. And with food, that's a huge concern. I think with just advertising, and of course there's regulations about how you can advertise, and it's mentioned in the piece in the UK. There's lots of regulations about the way food can be presented, but there's just something that I feel it's deeply fucked up about food being marketed to us that is not real food.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, is it the word that we would use, like hyper-real? Like you continue to be divorced further and further from reality.
Yeah.
And that's sort of why I think it's like the thing that is one of the interesting things is like when the completely artificial thing becomes your reference point. But yeah, I think that this also relates to the conversation what we were talking about earlier in the conversation about like, why, someone might feel some stronger spark about human interaction at like with someone at a bodega, right? Because more and more what you're encountering in the world is sort of fake.
Well, terrific work, Georgina. I really enjoyed this piece. I think Vittles is terrific and just putting out work that is worth reading, and you can subscribe on Substack. We've gotten to the part of the interview where calling it the Graydon Carter question. The premise is in 1997, Graydon Carter was running Vanity Fair and offering we'll call them large contracts, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 to write a couple articles a year. So I've been asking all these journalists to appear on the show. If you had that contract in 1997 Vanity Fair, Chris, what would that dream story be?
I don't know what the dream story is, but an immediate thought would be to either write about which other people have. Look, the people writing about the scene at, what is it called, Butterworth's? The MAGA restaurant in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
It's an appealing thing to me. I'd also just be, I mean, look, the whole economy of influencers is so huge right now. And that's not something I really engage with in my work because I write about the New York City industry. But like certainly I'd want to like write like a really like a bigger story about the like relationships and rivalries and feuds and gossip amongst all these people, because it's more because it's, everybody in that industry, I mean, there are a lot of really scrappy people that are trying to make something and establish themselves, and they have to do it without the backing of a media company, and so it's the stakes are high, and it's like
love
really
a
personal.
large reported piece about food influencers and the tribes and the rivalries, I'm sure, and also the scrappy startup nature of it. And then I think the unique element of influencer culture is then they all show up to a brand event. So you all got to have them in the same room at some point,
It's always like rich to like write about I'm not, it's not like I'm thinking of anything particular, but like any instance of people having to pretend they like each other when they might not.
Yeah.
And that, which is like, maybe we're interested in that as writers because that's a huge element of media.
Yeah.
Big feature of
maybe
media.
it's more of a media desk story at New York Mag. I feel that it could be interesting. Yeah. Good answer. I like that. Chris, on This Is Taste, we as guests about the discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire Fast and Furious taste check, media edition. Are you ready?
Okay, I can do this.
What is the first thing you read in the morning and where do you read it?
I go to the New York Magazine website.
Nice.
On my phone. But if
Well,
I'm
why
going to the
so?
gym,
Why?
I'm listening to Odd Lots or Know Your Enemy or something like that. That's not reading though. Also, why?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people there who are a lot smarter than me, and they edit or write really good stories.
Yeah.
And I often am, I'm just interested in I have been meaning to read Andrew Rice's story that went up today about the school system and like issues in education, and I haven't had a chance yet, but I will probably do that.
You mentioned the pods. You have a rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to like a lot of like financial podcasts that I don't want to mention. No, but I listen to Odd Lots. I'm biased. I listen to Know Your Enemy. I'm biased because Sam's a friend, but I think that I don't listen to every episode of anything, which is what I want, right? Like I don't want to listen to. I think the better podcasts or websites or magazines or whatever else like aren't publishing 100% of the stuff is not what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
But Sam and Matt Zipman are like super smart, and obviously. So are Joe Weisenthal and Tracy Alloway, and they, have guests on it who explain things that I have no idea about.
Yeah.
And those are the two that I listen to the most lately.
Do you read on actual paper?
Yeah, I mean, I magazines a little less right now, but the last two books I read were Dan Wang's Breakneck, which is about China's technological revolution and also sort of about like how the U.S. has stagnated in technological development and why China succeeded. But the last book that I finished was called Autumn in the Heavenly Empire, which is about the Taiping Rebellion and during the decline of the Qing Dynasty, which the short of it is that it's about a failed civil servant who had a mental breakdown, realized that he was the brother of Jesus Christ and started a civil war. And which at one point was concurrent with our Civil War. Right now I'm reading Jonathan Blitzer's book, Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here, which is about the migrant crisis.
Did you have a favorite food publication growing up?
Honestly, no. I mean, I didn't really get super into it until I was in college. I don't know if that counts as growing up. I mean, I started reading Savor, but then I read the early era of Ed Levine's Serious Eats. And I feel like that's my best answer because I don't want to pretend that I was reading like Bon Appetit when I was 13.
I mean, that's great. We just had Maggie on last episode of Food Writers talking, and we talked a lot about that early Serious Eats era.
It was a great website during its prime and also good people. I mean, Max Falkowitz, another person.
Yeah.
Also like a very positive influence on my trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. I love
in
that.
Media.
What about food TV? Was there any food TV in your household growing up or into your, adult life?
My first interaction or when I found out food TV existed was through Emerald because my older brother, Matt, who's 6 years older than me, and my dad would watch it. And so, through that, my dad discovered the spiciest hot sauce in the world, which was Tabasco. But that led to my older brother becoming a chef, which I think led to me in some way doing what I do. I've written about this. It was that Emerald and then No Reservations because my dad sort of found this is what I've written about. Sorry, my dad found a sort of commonality with Anthony Bourdain, and that they were both addicts, and so he gave my brother like the book Kitchen Confidential, but they would also watch those two shows together, and so through them I did.
Let's talk about YouTube and TikTok and social video in general. Where are you at right now with all that?
So because of my trip, the thing that I've been watching the most is an account called on Instagram, and I'm assuming they're on TikTok, but I watch it on Instagram because I'm a millennial, called Al Dente Life, which is just like one of those I feel like the guys in the UK started this. What are they called? Top Jaw or whatever.
Yeah, Top Jaw.
But it's just this dude talking to people about the restaurants they like, people in the industry mostly.
Yeah.
And I think that it's like it's kind of like maybe I don't know. Like I don't watch English language versions of that.
Yeah.
But I watch it for a few reasons, and partially because I was going to Taipei, but the food culture there is so strong that I think maybe the answers are better than what I think I would find in another city. In New York, I think that, my guy Rob Martinez does a better job at this stuff than anybody else doing
fully,
his videos. I like Nicholas Nuvan. Is that his name?
Yeah.
The Times profiled him recently. I like his videos. He has like a really kind of funny, bouncy energy. He feels like you're watching it and he sort of seems like a ping pong ball going around.
High energy, yeah.
I like his stuff. I've been watching less of the New York stuff because I was watching Al Dente Life all the time.
So that's your algorithm was looking at.
Yeah, on YouTube, I basically just watch non-food stuff because all I've been watching recently. Actually, that's not true. I watch the videos produced by this language learning channel called Mandarin Corner, and sometimes that involves her going to restaurants and walking around in wet markets and stuff.
Oh, cool.
So that's the food stuff that I'm watching right now.
Last question, Chris. Where do you want to be in 5 years with your media career?
I'm so bad at answering this question.
It's a tough one.
It's hard to say because I'm like, what is the industry going to look like in 5 years? I'd like to be doing a better version of what I'm doing now.
That's a great answer.
I'd like to be better at my job. I don't know. I feel pretty happy with the stories. I prefer to use we than I, but like we've published this year that I've worked on with my editor. And I would like whatever I've done then to make what I've done now look like a little more insignificant or normal.
Chris Crowley, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thanks for having me.
This Is Taste is hosted and produced by Eliza Barbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Episode portraits by Louise Zergan Pomeroy. Logo design by Ellie Skirzat and Ian Dingham. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.